Hey everyone, I'm Alyssa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 81 in the series. At least I think it is. Let's hope it is. I don't really know. I'm going to call this one Inspired by Design because Spencer's going to come on and we're going to have a little conversation about that topic. But I also have a finished object for you. This is the xxoo sweater by Paula Pereira. And what else do I have? I have a giveaway and yeah, that's about it for today. Just, you know, a sweater and some chatter. That's what we do here. Welcome back if you're coming back. I love to see you guys. I know it's been about 3 weeks again between the casts. Sorry about that. Summertime has been a little rough. I've been writing a paper for work, which is due in a week. And it was my birthday last week, and Spencer's back from his trip, and we got all the animals integrated, and it's been a little bit of a wild 3 weeks. So I'm happy to be here with you guys. If you're new, welcome. It's lovely to meet you. We have a Ravelry group over, it's the Knitting the Stash group in Ravelry. Show notes for this episode and all the other episodes are over on the blog, which is knittingthestash.wordpress.com. And if you're ever looking for anything I talk about, you will find the notes there. You can always email me too. And if you're looking for me, you can find me as Knitting the Stash just about everywhere, on YouTube, obviously, on Instagram and Ravelry, and on the blog, like I just said. Yeah. So look me up, send me messages. It's always really fun to get in touch with you guys and get some fun conversations going. So yeah, let's do Spencer first because he's got a tight schedule, so we'll fit him into the podcast. I'll do a little thing with Spencer first, and then I'll come back and talk about my xxoo sweater and the giveaway. All right. So guess who I dragged into the yarn room?
It was kicking and screaming.
Spencer's here to hang out with us for a little while today on the cast.
Greetings, podcast people, knitters of the world.
And as he was just saying a moment ago, he has been on other podcasts now.
It has been a busy schedule.
We were lucky to get him, really. I mean, I had to call my people, I had to call his people, and
I was on an hour-long podcast. I don't know how long you do this for, but it was pretty serious.
It was Tyler Hickson's podcast, Strangers Worth Meeting, and it was a good interview.
It was fun, yeah.
It was like a whole long hour with Spencer, so if you haven't had enough Spencer.
You gotta kill some time. Okay, we are gonna do some fun stuff on the cast today. This is Melissa's job to tell you, but I'm gonna tell you instead. Now we are gonna play Name That Scheme!
He threatened me, and last time he tried to give away all my yarn.
We're going to do a giveaway today, too.
We are doing a giveaway, but I've got it special over here. It's separate.
The Name That Scheme will result in a giveaway.
No. Alright, we got to get Millie to quiet down. Okay, so we're ready for Name That Scheme.
Well, that's just one of the things we're going to do today.
Oh, okay, we're not doing it. I'm like ready. Where's my blindfold?
What are the other topics for conversation?
I wanted to talk to you about this thing I've been thinking about, which is like I keep wanting to call it Inspired by Design, because I know we do a lot of modifications on here, and most of the time it's like I see something, I like it, I like most of it or some of it, but then I want to change all of it.
You just can't leave something as is.
I just can't leave well enough alone. So I wanted to talk about like what that's like for us. Because I don't know. I'd love to know from you guys, like if you see the world that way, or if you're interested in seeing the world that way, or if it's just like I'm crazy.
So the world's imperfect. It needs to be fixed.
No.
A little bit.
Mean,
tweak, modify.
We have had a long week of like conversations about like doing things the Lissy way, which is my way. And Spencer doesn't know.
We have talked about that a little bit.
And sometimes I confuse that with the right way.
So we're going to talk about that first, or do Name That Scheme?
Let's do Name That Scheme.
All right, Name That Scheme.
Because it's so embarrassing.
All right. In case you haven't tuned in to Name That Scheme before, I'm just going to go over the basic rules.
Tink's going to join us.
The dog just walked in. Basic rules and format for the show. Okay, Name That Scheme, the way it works is that while Melissa's out preparing for things for the podcast with sweaters and whatnot, I break into the yarn room, pull a couple of what I think are obscure, just weird or obscure skeins of yarn from her stash, her copious stash, Library of Congress scale stash, and then I bust them out here on the podcast just to see if she can even recognize them. Like, does she even have any idea what's in the stash? Or is it just like one of those things where she just looks at this yarn, it's like, I don't even know what I'm doing with that kind of a situation?
Okay, I'll do my best.
Alright, this is episode 2 of Name That Skein. The first episode, she did pretty well. Alright, here we go.
Okay.
You ready for this? Alright.
Do I have to close my eyes?
No, because I've got them all in a bag.
Oh, no.
Alright, this is the...
You were gentle with the yarn, right?
Well, you'll freak out a little bit. Alright. Number 1.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
I'm not supposed. This is a Megan Morrell Old Crow Art Yarns in the colorway.
Oh boy.
Ooh, it's not Archer, is it?
Take
Firestorm. I was wrong about the colorway. Old Crow Art Yarns. She's actually dyeing yarn this weekend.
Man, that just
like she's
looks
holed up in her house right now with tons of stuff, and she's dyeing this weekend. So
okay.
I shouldn't tell you that because I want to keep it all for myself. I have like a whole Old Crow Art Yarn collection.
All right.
Like, there's an entire bin of it.
Ding 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 ding.
It's pretty.
She gets to keep it.
It's pretty. This is Old Crow Art Yarn.
She gets to keep that one.
Megan Morrell, awesome, amazing indie dyer.
All right. Ready?
I'm trying not to look at the tags.
This is gonna be hard.
No, this is Wrenching Tradition Fiber. Yeah, Cami Noise. Boom! I made my meltdown sweater out of this. This was one of the skeins that I
For real?
used. It's a beautiful blue.
Just looked like some regular old blue skein of yarn.
And this is Big Sky, Montana. They're doing the festival this weekend.
Oh my God.
Out in Montana.
It's like a librarian who spends way too much time with the books.
Cami Noise is awesome. They're out doing the Copper Cave Fiber Fest. Do I have my postcard still?
Oh my God.
I do. The Copper Cave Fiber Fest is happening right now.
Okay,
it's almost like we planned those.
I feel like it's a setup, but it's not.
But it's not.
Okay, all right. Okay.
I'm 2 for 2. I know I'm going to get one of these wrong.
You get to keep it.
Okay.
All right, here's a new one. Ready?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's rope. That's your nylon. That's your nylon.
It's not nylon. That's bungee cord.
Oh, I don't get to keep it.
It's a skein of bungee cord.
Oh, darn, you get to keep it.
Skein of bungee cord.
Now, this would be very useful for a lot of things. So
Could you knit with that?
You gotta keep the white out of the screen now.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Could you knit with that?
You can knit with this.
All right, that's nice. That is a whole
That's nice. He's like, I'm gonna take it back to my
bungee
stash.
cord. This comes from the colorway black from Amazon.com.
Oh, okay.
Awesome stuff. Really useful in projects. You can put it in cuffs and things. All right, ready for another one? This is
trickery.
This is a
amazes.
local. This one's local. I need to give you a hint. Ready? Okay, put your hands up.
Local. This is zucchini from the garden. I don't even need to open my. I can't believe you put
Summer squash.
You put it with the yarn.
Yeah, it's all organic and stuff.
Oh, Jesus!
I figured it was okay.
Help me.
Okay, here's another one.
God,
You're not gonna get this one.
I'm afraid.
You're not gonna get it.
I'm so afraid. That's my own hand spun.
Without looking?
Yeah.
You can tell just by touching it.
It's my hand spun.
Oh my gosh.
Dale. Pretty stuff.
Okay, you get to keep it.
I win.
And the zucchini.
Well, we
You
have
get to keep the
so
squash,
much zucchini.
But I get to keep the bungee cord. All right, tune in next time for Name That Skein.
Woo, look at the yarn I won.
It was supposed to result in a giveaway, but it didn't this time.
There'll be a giveaway
if you
at
have
the end
any
of the
hints
episode.
for me how to stump Melissa on Name That Skein, send them to me, metaspencer@gmail.com.
Just try. I'd like to see you guys get together and try this.
I just need to figure this out. You did pretty good. Postcards came out and stuff.
Hey, man.
That was good.
I gotta stay up to date.
All right, so we're going to talk about this vision.
The vision of imperfection, as you call it.
The vision of wanting to tweak stuff.
Okay.
Tweakability vision.
Okay, so you guys know my tweakability vision because I look at a sweater and I'm just like, oh, that's good, but let's make the sleeves longer and let's change the front and let's add a panel.
That was this sweater.
This one I just basically made it longer and made just a few little changes.
You haven't talked about that yet.
Not yet. No, I'll talk about
Cool
that.
sweater coming up. It's one of my favorites. The reason it's one of my favorites is that it looks completely like worn out.
You like it because it's kind of faded.
Yeah,
it's like this fade.
It looks like it's been in the back of the van at the beach for a long time.
He called it my camping sweater.
And then you just throw it on and on a cool
hiking
day.
Sweater.
It's just the best.
Yeah.
But it's brand new.
Yeah.
All right, so tweaking a few things.
Yeah, so and sometimes it doesn't work. Like I've had plenty of sweaters where I'm like, I'm gonna add cables and then it's just like, whoa, that didn't work.
You added that big cable band thing.
And it kind of like warped the sweater a little bit.
Made it like a death metal sweater.
It's cool, but it's not what I expected.
It was a little more goth than she was going
But I
for.
often will I was like at a concert way before the pandemic. Remember when we used to gather together and touch each other, get near each other and sing and stuff? I was at a concert and the lady sitting in front of me was like, had this beautiful sweater on, and I actually found myself getting my cell phone out and like taking
remember that.
pictures of it.
That was at the opera. Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, Phantom of the, when we took Zach to see Phantom of the
That's
Opera.
when people went to performances and stuff.
Right, yeah, back in the day, the before times, as we're calling them. So I like look at the world that way, and I just kind of think to myself, like, oh, that could be better, that could be different. Like, we could take, I have tons of patterns in my Ravelry favorites where Spencer's like, oh, I don't know if I like that one. I'm like, no, it's just that element. Like, don't you see this thing on the sleeve? It's really cool.
Yeah.
Or, So does it work that way for you? Like, do you see the?
Well, I guess what that makes me think about is that I always want to, if I'm making something, especially if it's for a YouTube video, I want it to be creative and original. Mm-hmm. I don't want to just like make a derivative thing that's exactly a template of what someone else has done, even though sometimes that's the best way to do it. So I guess I always, want to do something a little bit different, a little bit better, a little bit.
Like your own style, like add a little bit of you, or add a little bit of what you think is the Spencer way.
And I don't want to. Well, I also don't want to just totally like plagiarize someone to rip them off.
Right.
On YouTube in particular, if I just made a copy of someone's stuff and didn't cite them, that's just not cool.
It's so interesting though that you'd raise that, because like in the knitting world, what a lot of people do is they get a pattern and they make that.
Yeah.
Like it's about a lot about replication and about trying to actually. A lot of times people really want the exact yarn, the exact color, the exact sweater. Like they see it and they're like, I want that.
But then you can't get the gauge quite right.
Right. You don't get the gauge of the yarn.
Your size is a little bit different or whatever.
Right. And then there's a group of us who seem to like to really modify things, not only for our own bodies, but like. Just dig into the pattern a little bit, see how it's made, and then kind of like change it up. And so
add a hood, make it a hoodie.
Yeah, but it's hard.
Every sweater should be a hoodie.
It's not always easy to do that though, because like then there is that question of like how much modification until it's like your own design. When does it become yours?
I guess for you guys, it usually has elements of previous sweaters because it has 2 arms and a neck hole.
Yeah, and I think of so well said, well described.
They're all ripping off the first person to make a sweater with 2 arms and a neck hole.
But I think of like Elizabeth Zimmerman and like a lot of her philosophical stuff about sweaters, and like there's nothing new under the sun to a certain extent. But she talked about unvention, which is an interesting.
She's an author or something.
She was like a knitter from like original knitter,
old school,
like. And she talked about unvention, which is like basically you create something that surely someone else has come up with, but it's not an invention. It's it's like
that happens.
But you're working on it for the first time, or you're showing it to the world. Yeah. Something that
or you're faced with the kind of problem or situation or material or something, and then you do the same thing as someone else.
Yeah, and that was one thing we were talking about. Is like different materials are often the issue. Like if you're trying to like modify something, sometimes you have to really dig in to figure out how it got to be that way, so that you can figure out what element needs to change or you'd want to change, or how to like. Because like I'm just thinking of with a sweater. If I take a sweater for like a pattern that has like the one I'm working on right now, that's out of mostly wool/linen cotton yarn, and I were to make it in 100% wool or 100% cotton, it would completely change the way.
Well, that's what happened with this dude.
Yeah.
This guy the reason this looks like a cool old surfer sweater is because the
yarn. Yeah. Because it's this New Zealand woolen spun yarn that's got all this variegation to it.
The original was like silk or something.
Yeah, it was like a linen or cotton or something, and it was kind of puffy, and it looked, I don't know, I just didn't like it. It was very feminine and very...
That's what I was going to say. It's a little bit feminine.
It's not that I don't like the feminine.
Yeah.
That's not for my style.
Yeah, this one's a little more rugged.
This is a little more like pull on your hiking boots and like, so it's more my style. Yeah. But material-wise, do you have that issue when you're working with different materials? Like, is it... I assume it's not just a knitter.
They dictate a lot.
Issue.
Yeah. They dictate and they limit and they, have certain affordances and all that kind of stuff.
I feel like I'll hear you talk about seeing something made out of steel, and then you're like, well, but I wonder if I could do it in wood. Or or vice
the
versa.
Other way around, yeah.
And it's just like, gets really complicated.
Materials just dictate a lot.
Yeah.
I was building that log cart.
No, the tree trolley.
Yeah, the tree trolley. The tree trolley this past week. And this is like a big trolley for hauling logs around.
Like you'd slap a whole tree on it and then you'd like lift it and be able to like dolly it out of there. Do you like that? That was good, right?
That's not what it's... No, it's for a bunch of branches.
No.
You put a bunch of branches.
I want it to be like one of those log things where you, like, you fell a tree and the
those
tree
are
just,
sweet.
Like, ends and then
those
you
are
just,
cool. I was looking at one of those on Craigslist today.
But that's not what you're doing.
$1,500.
See, I didn't even know what he's
No,
doing. Half the time
different.
I don't even know what he's doing.
This is for like a huge pile of branches on a cart so you can haul them out of like the back of a property to the front.
Okay.
Anyway, so I made this thing, and in my usual way, I made it with a bunch of cheap old trash. So, I didn't want to spend any money on anything. It was just junk, like scrappy old metal and stuff I had laying around. And the whole thing kind of ended up sucking a little bit. Ooh. Just a wee bit.
But that's
because
the thing.
you burn through different kinds of steel don't go so well together, and I was burning through the thin stuff to weld to the thick stuff, but it's gonna work. Like it's gonna work. It's good. It's just a little rough looking.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. But that's kind of like what happens sometimes. Is you modify something and then it doesn't work out, or you learn a lot though in that process.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to know if like other people see the world. Like, I don't know, if you see the world as would you call it like a creative, inspired kind of like, I see that and I like it and I want to change it. Or if you see like, if it's like Spencer described and you're like, oh, that needs to be fixed. Like,
well, my take on Ravelry, just having perused Ravelry like 3 times, that's not, or more than that, is that a lot of people see just the choice of color and yarn and what is it called? Thickness of yarn or whatever?
Yeah, like yarn weight.
Yarn weight.
Yeah, grist.
All those crazy terms that don't make any sense. Fingering versus sport. Finger sport weight.
We've talked about that on here before, and you were just like disgusted.
They see that as the way that they're changing it.
Yeah, and that's a modification.
Yeah, like they don't necessarily change the pattern, but they.
It was interesting, like,
and make it their own. Like those pictures of people's versions of a pattern are really distinct just because they chose different yarn.
Yeah, but there are some designers who actually like kind of capitalize on that and kind of will help people with it. So like Andrea Mowry has this sweater called the Weekender that she put out first in a worsted weight yarn, and it was really like, I think it's one of her most popular patterns, and she just released a fingering weight version of the pattern, so it's with different like extended sizing and stuff. But like she did the modification for people because it was like one of the most asked for things was like, how do I make this fingering weight sweater? Where like some of us who like to modify and who have done it a long time would feel pretty comfortable just being like, okay, I can modify this. You just do a lot of sweater math, you figure out what the measurements are supposed to be and all that kind of stuff, and then you take a different gauge and you knit the sweater in that different gauge. But she worked it out. She worked it out for people, which is also an interesting. Yeah. And I've seen a lot more designers.
But you like to modify at a bigger scale, where you change the
elements.
Yeah, change the elements.
Yeah.
Nuke an element, add some stuff.
Yeah. Just
run out of this yarn, so I'm going to do something else.
Super more interesting. Yeah. But that maybe brings us to like one other little thing we wanted to talk about today, which is like the like difficulty level or like difficulty in. For me in knitting, for you in building, we were talking about like sometimes the difficulty level is like challenging, like a new skill you want to learn, like for me it was like, how do I hold my yarn for color work, and how do I learn about like knitting sideways, or how do I, like those things are, to me they're worth the difficulty.
Like really tough.
The challenge, because you're learning a whole new set of stuff. But I was also just working on the beginnings of a sweater that had like this super like difficult.
She was getting so pissed off at that thing.
On this I-cord, and it's like, what you said, you said, okay, you're not feeling like there's a payoff. And that's the thing, is like difficulty level can be like challenging or it can just be annoying. And I really dislike the annoying stuff.
Just because it's hard doesn't mean it's worth doing.
Yeah.
I guess. Unless, No,
but it's good. I mean, also there's like learning patience and like all that kind of other good stuff, but.
And I know I've backed away from some techniques that would be nice to know and be really good at, but I just, I backed away from them because they were just so fiddly.
Yeah.
And hard.
The fiddly stuff, I mean, if you can find a way to do it better or like more efficiently, then it's like that blanket I've been working on, the Persian Dreams one. Part of the reason that I set it down years ago was because the cast on was like miserable, like just a miserable cast on.
This is this blanket made of all these
the little hexagons.
And
like you start in the center with 12 stitches, and you're like, I can't. Ugh.
But now you've gotten good at it.
I found a different method for the cast on. So I found this pinhole method for the cast on from Very Pink Knits, and it's like, boom! Oh, okay, it's actually fun.
Very Pink Knits comes through.
It's fun to knit now because
she
of her
was knitting
tutorial.
these things like crazy, and then she started doing sweaters, and then I said, so you gonna finish that blanket? She's like, oh yeah, I'll knit one of those between every sweater.
Yeah.
Did you do that last one?
I got one started.
So now
then I
it's gonna be
started
like a
another
couple
sweater.
years. You start another sweater.
I know.
And how many? Yeah, like 30 more hexagons.
No, I have.
A lot.
I have 12 done, and I
Okay.
think there's 12 to go. So
The one I thought was really cool back in the day was the Hexapuff.
the Hexapuff blanket.
The Hexapuff.
Yeah.
I want a Hexapuff sweater, like a full-on.
Which reminds me of that swatch sweater that we saw. Like
That
it was
was
in my
pretty
favorites,
good.
and you were just
That was
kind of
pretty
like,
good.
wow, this guy just took all his
She's
swatches.
gonna put a picture on the page here of this dude.
Just put all of his
Raver
swatches together,
style,
made a sweater. I was like,
Rave-tastic
yes.
sweater.
That's awesome.
It was good.
It was really cool.
I liked it.
Yeah,
I think in the back he was
I'll put a
probably
link
doing
in.
something creative because I don't know if it all came together.
I
But
wonder. Yeah. Anyway,
it was awesome.
these are the things we think about.
And how to stump you on name that
No,
scheme.
you're gonna have to work a little harder on
I
that
guess so.
one. Thanks for coming on the cast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I have another podcast to go to, so
Right, yeah, he's busy.
I'll talk to you
We
later.
just barely fit him in.
talk to you guys later.
So it's always super fun to have Spencer on the cast. I hope you guys enjoyed that little segment. And now on to some knitting. This is Bisou by Paula Pereira, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. And I knit this in Mary Furnace Wear of Maniatoto Wool, her Rough Ridge DK yarn. And this is her beautiful little tag here. This is Maniatoto Rough Ridge, and this is her 4-ply. And I'll give you the stats there. This is her 4-ply yarn, 100% New Zealand wool, and I did a feature on Mary a few episodes back. I'll put the link over in the show notes in case you're wanting to go back and watch that particular episode. So this yarn is merino cross wool, 85%, 15% Polworth. And this is her flax colorway, which I absolutely fell in love with when I went on her website and started looking around. Mary and I did a yarn exchange a few months back. So I sent her some shorn, some of my farm to skein yarn, and she sent me some of her wonderful, basically farm to skein yarn from New Zealand. So I knit up a cowl in some of the other yarn she sent. We gave away some of the other yarn, and then I got to knit a sweater in the flax colorway. So this is what it looks like on the skein. It is a beautiful variegated, kind of like reddish, coppery, not quite salmony, like it's a beautiful, the light's making it kind of come out a little bit pale here. I think you'll be able to see it better in the sweater itself. Kind of bring this guy forward here a little bit. Yeah, there you go. And last episode I talked about some of the color management I was doing on the upper parts of the sweater. Because when you're working with a hand-dyed variegated yarn, it's best to swap skeins out. And so at the last episode I talked about how I started with one color and then wanted to do a little bit of striping around the upper part of the sweater to give it a little bit of interest. So that's where the striping comes in, and then I just went for the full variegated, swapping out 2 yarns for the rest of the body. And I talked a little bit about what I was going to do for the sleeves, because I wasn't going to... Up here I did 3 different skeins to kind of really get the variegation going. On the arms, what I ended up doing was I had these 2 skeins going for the body, and at the end I had, a little bit left of each of them. So I took my original skein and I took one of these body skeins that was left over, and I kind of used one of each for the arms. So this is one skein from the body and this original skein mixed together, and this is the other skein from the body and this original skein mixed together. And I think the effect is pretty perfect. Like, it really blends in nicely. I didn't see any kind of like color pooling or any other kinds of issues with the sleeves, so I'm really happy with the way that turned out. What's different about this sweater, and you heard Spencer talk about it as kind of like a worn-in camping, hiking kind of sweater. And I think that's because when I showed him the original, which I'll show you guys here, the original has a much more kind of summery, linen-y, cottony kind of feel. So I'll see if it'll show up here, yeah, without the lights too much. So it has 3/4 length sleeves, it's see-through, it's knit up in a much more summer weight yarn, because this is from Amirasu issue 20, which is their latest issue. And I think you can see in this photo, it's basically a very kind of sheer looking sweater. And that's not really a look that I'm into, and I don't really like wearing sweaters in the summertime. I'm what, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm weird, maybe other people like wearing sweaters in the summertime, but what I wanted to do with this sweater, my vision for it was that I wanted this component of it, the Henley part, and I thought that was like the coolest element of the sweater. And then I really wanted to knit it in a lightweight wool. So this is, Mary's wool this is woolen spun. So a woolen spun sweater is super light. Like if I were to pull this off, it's like a feather when you're holding it. So when you put it on your body, it just feels so light, but it's so warm because woolen spun yarn traps the air, unlike worsted spun yarn. So by trapping the air, it's lighter, fluffier, and warmer, actually. So my vision for this was to keep the Henley, knit a full arm length winter sweater out of a woolen yarn, and Mary's yarn just popped into the forefront of my mind because I was so excited to knit a sweater with the yarn that she sent along. So other modifications, I knit the body just straight down and a lot longer. It's not a cropped sweater at all. And I'll put some photos in here of me wearing it so that you can see what it looks like. It is gonna be like one of my favorite sweaters, I think, because it is just so perfect. Like I often knit cardigans and I forget about how wonderful pullovers are. And a pullover like this, especially in fingering weight yarn, just reminds me of all the great sweaters I had like when I was a kid that were just, you pull them on, you're warm, and they're just wonderful. So I'm pretty excited about that. So it has the full length body and then full length sleeves. And so because I was using a different yarn, different gauge, you guys know I was doing some sweater math with this sweater to modify it. And sometimes modifications are just that. It's just sweater math to make sure that your yarn and your gauge will get you a product that you actually want in the end. So I left, as usual, my pins on this side, and they're basically stolen from the other side. As I knit, I put pins in where my decreases are, and then that way when I knit the next sleeve, I can pop the pins off and know where my decreases are. It's kind of like keeping a live record for myself. So the pins on this one, I wanted to show you what I did with the decreases because I did them a little bit differently than a lot of people would do in a sweater. A lot of times with a sweater, you're gonna have decreases that are fairly even, going all the way down. And with this sweater, I felt like I had a little bit of extra fabric in the shoulder after the raglan, and that's often the case for me. Whenever I knit raglans, I feel a little bit like there's a little bit of extra fabric, so I want to get rid of that extra just a little bit quicker than a normal decrease would allow for. So you'll see here that I did decreases every 6 rows for about five different times. Then I switched to every 8 rows once I got rid of that extra fabric. Switch to every 8 rows. I'm enjoying this kind of, I feel like I'm in a little, like, I don't know, like a little forest or a little den with like some little janglies hanging down. So I've got 6 decreases every 6 rows here, and then I switch to every 8 rows, then I switch to every 12 rows. So it doesn't, as you can see, it doesn't really, it's not like a super noticeable effect on the sleeve. It's not creating a sleeve that's got like a big, like a swerve or anything strange in it. It's looks like a very normal sleeve, but my decreases decrease in frequency. My decreases decrease in frequency as I go down toward the wrist. And then I threw in an extra one toward the end. I went every 6 rows again toward the end, and I did a partial twisted rib for the cuffs and for the hem. So that is all to say that as you're doing decreases for the arm, don't feel trapped by like needing to do them exactly, you know, in this even way, because an even way doesn't always accomplish what you want to accomplish. Sometimes you have to kind of work with the fabric that you have and the number of stitches that you have to make for a better sleeve. So that was the biggest modification, and I did a lot of, I'm gonna grab my pattern. I did a lot of like sweater math to do that, so I don't know if you can see this, but this is all sweater math to try to figure out basically the circumference up here, the circumference down here, and the length between the two from the armpit all the way down, so I'd know how many rounds I had to make as many decreases as I needed to make. Sweater math, fun stuff. Other modifications. Up here I did a straight up twisted rib where you knit through the back loop of your knit stitches and purl through the back loop of your purl stitches, and it's a nice effect. It's fine, but I didn't want to do the purl through the back loop for the hem, in part because I really don't like tight ribbing on the bottom of a sweater. It really bugs me if it's kind of sitting on my hips in a tighter way than it needs to. I like it to just kind of just sit nicely without squeezing. So I went with a modified twisted rib. I think a lot of people maybe do this too, but I just did knit through the back loop and then purl the regular way. And that creates, I can show you on the body here, that creates a little bit of a looser rib. Not quite the full effect of like the twist, the full twisted rib that really does cinch in the rib a little bit more. So yeah, I did that with the sleeves and the cuffs, and the other modification I made is that I decided to go proportionally with the hem and with the cuffs and with the collar. So with the hem, I decided on 1.5 inches of ribbing because that just, it felt right to me. It was about the right length. It just looked kind of proportionally right. And that was the first part of the sweater that I finished. So once I have 1.5 inches on the lower rib, then that helps me decide how much my collar is going to be, and it helps me decide how much my hem is going to be. So my collar, I wanted to do half as much as my hem, just proportion, kind of looks nice. So if this is 1.5 inches, this is 3/4 of an inch, and I quite like the way that that came out. You can see it up there. And then for the cuffs, because I did 1.5 inches on the hem, 1.5 inches on the cuffs. So it's a proportion thing. These two should be in proportion, should be pretty much equal in a regular old run-of-the-mill sweater. And then I find that collars tend to be about half of whatever your lower ribbing is. So it worked out really well with this sweater. And like I said, hopefully you'll have seen pictures of me wearing it. It is seriously going to be one of my favorite sweaters coming this next season. So if you're interested in the modifications, I've put all of the info up on my Ravelry page, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And again, this is the Rough Ridge 4-ply yarn from Maniatoto Wool in New Zealand. I think they're starting to ship to the United States again. Not positive, but they will eventually in the pandemic or after the pandemic. But Mary's wonderful. She's working on making sure that New Zealand wool makes it into yarn and isn't wasted or sent off to other places where it's just kind of mixed in. Like, it's a real preservation effort on her part. So check her out, look her up, Maniatoto Wool, totally worth it. Beautiful colors. She hand dyes all the yarn. It's just beautiful. So, and you can see it makes beautiful sweaters. And I only needed 3 skeins for this. This is I think I ended up with a size 37 with the ease and everything, between 37 and 38 for the bust. And I used only 3 skeins of her yarn to make that size sweater. So if you were gonna go up, you'd probably need a couple more skeins. And if you were gonna go a little bit smaller, you would still only need 3. This is all I had left over from the 3rd skein, even with all my color switching and color management. So I think that's pretty darn good. 3 skein sweater, fingering weight yarn, for about that size, for a 36, 34, 36, 38, that's about pretty typical. So there you go. I've got like fuzzies on my nose and it's driving me crazy from some yarn somewhere. And the other sweater I'm working on now is from the same issue of Amirasu, and I will talk about that one on the next episode, hopefully. But it's the one that had the little fiddly bit Spencer and I were talking about, so we'll get back to that. Okay, last but not least, I feel like we all need a little pick-me-up. So I went through my stash of stuff and I found some things that I thought might brighten somebody's day. So I'm going to do a little My Stash to You giveaway. The first is a little bit of Knit Crate yarn. This is the Uri yarn by Knit Crate in Sugared Sport. It's got a little, it's purple, which I love, and it's sparkly. It's a superwash merino, 20%, or I'm sorry, a 70% superwash merino, 20% nylon, 10% stellina, sport weight. And I've got 2 skeins here. I thought this might make a beautiful little kids jumper, or a hat, or a set of mitts and hats for someone out there. It's a little bit summery and a little bit cute. So that's one of the prizes. And the other prizes are these needles from xxoo. Let me pull one out of the package. So when I started knitting socks, I was trying all kinds of different methods for knitting socks, and one of my friends mentioned that this little tiny needle was her favorite way of doing it, and she holds it like this and actually just knits her socks with these tiny little needles. I'm a knitter that holds the needles with my pinkies, as it turns out, so this doesn't work for me. So I have 2 of these. One that is size 2.75 millimeters, and one that is 2.25 millimeters, and I would gladly give these to someone else who will use them. They're just those mini xixoo needles. Yeah, so that's the other prize, if you want some little sock knitting needles. And all I want to know from you guys is, tell me something good. Tell each other something good. We've got a crazy world out there right now, and I think good news is good news. So if you can pop something positive in the comments, I will enter you to win one of those 2 prizes, either the skeins of yarn from Knit Crate, or the fun knitting needles for socks that you want to try. Either way, tell me something good. tell us all something good. Share some happiness and positivity in the world. Yeah. Otherwise, I think that's about it for me today, for us. Spencer's off probably doing another podcast, you know, so I'll go try to find him. I hope you guys are having a happy weekend, and I will try to see you in 2 weeks next time instead of 3. No birthdays, no papers, nothing to come between us. It's like the postal system, right? No, neither rain nor snow nor dark of night. I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. All right, hope you guys are well. Take care. I'll see you next time.
Welcome back to another episode of Knitting the Stash.
I'm Spencer.
And I'm Melissa, the knitter here at Knitting Enterprises.
Okay. That's gonna totally go on like a real blooper. Hey, so we got
Spencer.
No, just
this is Spencer.
Stop.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too.